This is the Besh and Broadcast with Franco and Carl. We are looking at the Flesh and Blood Philippine National Championship 2023 Swiss rounds, round one. Round one, we have Earl Edison Ang on Icelander Stormbind versus Enric Medina on Dorothea Iron Song. What can you say about this matchup, Carl?
I think this matchup is very Icelander favored. Dorinthia is very predictable in their in recent iterations, and I think most Icelanders would know how to counter them. We can also notice Dorinthia has AB2 with Courage of Blade Hold and Refraction Bolters, which signifies for me that they would go aggressive.
Aggressive sounds just about right as we see turn zero. Dorinthea is leading on a sharpened steel into a steel blade supremacy, and that
Supremacy.
dawn blade is swinging for eight. Turn zero. So, what
So
is the point of this, you think?
I actually don't think this is a very good move on the Dorinthia's part, since it is easily blockable by the Icelander. As we can see here, you can block with three cards, which you don't really the cards that you don't really need for the first turns. So now you can see that the Dorinthia is now has now an arsenal. But let's see what the plan of the Dorinthia is.
And we see the Icelander now refilling his hand, so hopefully those were cards that Earl wanted to get out of the way anyway. So let's wait for the first play.
Yeah, so this is a very value-based matchup. As you can see here, Earl plays a Fendal's Fighting Spirit for 7 and gain 1 life. It's now up to 37 hit points. So this is a very above rate attack for 7 using only 2 cards. And if the Dorianty doesn't block, it will skew on the favor of the Icelander.
And not to mention that if the Dorinthea doesn't block, it sort of incentivizes the Icelander to look at how to disrupt in the following turn,
Yes.
since he knows that maybe the Dorinthea is looking for uh, a really really big stack turn. So we see Enric Dorinthea blocking with a Warrior's Valor. So maybe there's a
I think it
redundant
was
go
blue.
again effect. Warrior's Valor is blue.
Okay, so yeah, I'm not sure, but it did look blue. So the Dorinthia is now going for value, I guess, to push damage. But let's see how the Icelander responds.
Since Earl asked to check, I guess the Iron Song Determination followed up with a
Oh, so that's
Warrior's
why
Valor. That's
he has
why.
another value. So
So
this is
indeed redundant go again effect. Sometimes you can have too much of that in your hand. So often it's good to just play the value game and just get one or more of those out of your hand. And it looks like Dorinthia is swinging for what? Is this seven? Oh, it's for six.
I
Okay,
think
so
this would be six.
that means that's a yellow
One
Warrior's
plus
Valor.
two. I think this is one of the more popular builds of of Dorinthia, where they have
Oh wait,
rainbow
it's
colors of
four.
Warriors
Wait.
Valor. No, this was the second attack.
Oh, okay, it's the second swing. Okay, so he blocks the
So
second
this is
swing out
blocked completely for.
just to make sure that they
And I
don't
think
get
this
the
is the correct
counter.
move in the side of the. Yeah, I think this is the correct move for the side of the Icelander since you want to be at lower life and maintain a certain level of life parity, but
Hmm.
still being lower, so
But
you have more value from your scarf.
and
Scars,
and
Wounded
without
Bulls, and Fienda's fighting spirit.
giving the counter. I think that's the very important part because Dorinthea will almost
Yes,
always push for the
yes.
counter, especially if they find an opening where the Icelander is not trying to disrupt back.
So
So,
we also saw an early usage of the Iron Rod Gun
mm, which
in
is
order to prevent the 4 damage, prevent the counter.
yep, which I think is the optimal way
Oh,
to go, and that's a Wounded Bull following up after the Scar for a Scar.
well,
Another value attack. The reason
so
why people like the math on
yeah,
Icelander. So I think I guess this begs the
so you
question
see
as
that
well.
this
I
is
sorry.
very good.
I guess this begs the
Yeah,
question
it's
of
okay.
what is
This has very yeah, go.
I guess this begs the question of what is in the arsenal at this point since the card has been hiding there for I think
Yes.
two turns now.
Yeah, and this is a very high value play from the side of the Icelander using 3 cards to deal to present 12 damage. And the Wounded Bull has additional value since the Icelander was a 31 and Dory was a 32. So max value of gaining the +1 damage. So Dory takes 5,
And again, I still kind of
draws
want to
off.
know what is in the arsenal that's been hiding there
I
for all this time. Oh.
agree. Very
So,
good Icelander players would really keep key cards in their arsenal to disrupt very good turns, such as this could be looking like one since there is a glistening steel blade. So we see a naked dawn blade.
so a naked Dawnblade for 3, meaning either he's baiting a block or that he's trying to look for a better hand next turn, probably, while trying to keep up a resource for AB, just in case something happens along the way.
Yeah. So for usually for this, you really don't block it since you would incentivize the glint and allow the Dory to draw a card.
Okay, so here,
And if you also notice, they have good life totals favored on the side of the Icelander. So it's another Dawnblade for 3.
and I guess if there's nothing too threatening at this point, you either don't block or you block if you have Def React back up.
I think it would be pretty safe to block with 2 cards to block with 6 defense value. Since if this is the Dory only has 1 resource floating, as well as 2 cards in hand, presenting +6.
So we
So
have,
Aether Hail,
yep,
blue, I guess.
yep. So there's floating 2 resources. And there you go. Uh, I think Enric is thinking of whether to AB that.
So this is very annoying on the side of the Dorentia, since if he actually pays for the resources, he doesn't have any follow up, and without any follow up, it's very predictable to pay for to block the Dawnblade. So he took the Aether Hail
And he took the Waning Moon follow up as well.
and winning, and did not block the Dawnblade. So Icelander is actually pretty ahead in this matchup, still with the life lead, and still with equipment, and if I'm not mistaken, a tunic up. And again, very good
Another
value
value
play
attack. Yep.
with the fighting spirit.
The thing with these value attacks
Although
is
he did
that
not gain any life from this.
yeah, but the thing with these value attacks is they're in big chunks that allow you to allow the opponent to basically make mistakes. So if they don't block it or if they don't try to value how their next turn plays out, they could be looking at a lot of lost value, especially when they take all these just
Yeah,
point blank without really having an idea on how to sequence or how to play around the next turn, especially in this situation where Icelander still has an arsenal after this.
yes. I think this is why Dory has fallen out of favor in the Icelander meta. Since Dory actually is all mostly always just on rate. Usually each card are just on rate, not above rate. So they have difficulty going over the value that the Icelander can present,
And here we see
particularly.
the equipment being used uh, for the first time, which is, I guess, a little odd since he already faced down a big sequence like Scar for a Scar into Wounded Bull earlier. I think he could have used the at least the Battle Worn as well on the Refraction Bolters. But anyway, here we are with another Warrior's Valor. In response, there's a Cold Snap.
So instant response with the cold snap. So this is actually very good since it also threatens the arsenal, as well as the Icelander having two resources floating. Ah no, he used the tunic resource.
Which is very up in value, especially when you consider that Cold Snap draws a card at this time. So you have uh you have Dory paying for the the Frostbite, and now you have a Dawnblade attacking for 7. So we see it being blocked for
Cards, but they're
3,
now in his
and
hand. So this attack for 7 is a Fate for Sheen, cleanly blocking 7.
here we see the power of having switching it up between defense reactions and disruption and big attacks in Arsenal. So the patterns aren't always obvious, but a good Icelander player can basically uh, set things up to be able to react appropriately depending on the matchup and depending on the board state.
Mm-hmm. So I think the Icelander is thinking about, yeah, playing the Waning Moon. The problem with playing the Waning Moon, if the opponent has no action point and still a card in hand, it would depend if, uh, yeah, you can see that they only have a red, so they have more value from dealing the 3 damage from the Waning Moon.
Yep, and we see that
So it's looking pretty one-sided for now.
and we
Oh,
see another Scar
even
for a
more
Scar.
value. So this does not have go again, but it doesn't matter. It's a one card for 4, and the Icelander will have a card in arsenal.
Which is the really, really
So
big
just,
mind game that Icelander plays.
yeah, and it's just extra annoying for the Dory player.
Yeah, because it demands cards regardless.
Forcing,
And the physical damage attacks
yes.
kinda the physical damage attacks kinda ask for cards, and sometimes they're cards that the other player doesn't really want to give out. And oh, this is pretty spicy. Nourishing
Yeah.
emptiness. So usually, this is the
Oh crap!
only card. Holy cow! That's a block for 7 going around the
He's
dominate. So
basically
Dory does.
negating everything.
Yep. So
Yeah,
Dory doesn't have the +1.
he didn't gain anything from playing it out. And again, Icelander doing Icelander thing. 3 for 7.
Three
One,
for
two cards
seven.
dealing 7 damage.
Is he gaining 1 life from this?
0 for 4. No, 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 no.
Ah, okay.
If I'm not mistaken, they're at 25 and 18.
So this is basically the Icelander just trying to press the advantage with a card that's, I guess, on rate, but still annoying to block since it's a break point.
Yeah, it's above rate for when attacking, a bit below rate when blocking. It's a very good card.
And anyway, and
Just annoying.
yeah, and anyway, you don't expect Dory to be running any defense reactions at this point, especially with the matchup. So
Yes.
yeah, so you can expect at most blocking 6, so you're still leaking 1 damage, and so still that's more or less a favorable exchange. And again, you still have an arsenal.
So again, this is threat in Iron Song Determination. This is again threatening um, to gain a counter from Dawnblade. It would depend on the hand of the Dorinthia. But they only have 2 cards in hand and 1 card in arsenal available.
And I think we're still waiting
So
for Icelander's response on that.
yes.
So depending on the
So this is a very
response,
good time to disrupt it. Oh crap!
oh,
One
so
of the
that
best
was
responses that you can do
yeah,
to a
probably one of
dominated
the
attack.
best
It would be better
responses.
for a turn such as Steel Blade Supremacy or a Glistening Steel Blade turn, but this is fine,
But it
especially if you have Tunic up and you can basically convert 2 cards into Channel Lake Frigid plus 3 damage.
And you see that the coronet peak is still intact, so the usual sequence of playing that out and blocking out to coronet and arsenal on the next turn is still pretty much alive. And I think the read here was that uh, the Iron Song determination would be stacked with another buff or probably a reprise.
Yes.
So having that channel lake
Yeah.
out sort of messes everything up. So
I think this should yes for 4.
it's a 4, yeah.
Yeah.
There. Earl being a good guy.
And at this point actually it's not very threatening since you have channel up and you have a very large life advantage. You're getting the Dorinthia to the certain life threshold that you can deal lethal damage. So it's not looking good for the Dory.
And we see the Icelander taking a hit and Dory
Yeah.
breaking the refraction bolters. So that doesn't cost an additional resource from through the channel Lake Frigid because it's not an action. And so now he's
However, this is enough.
yes, this one should cost 1 resource, an additional
Yeah.
resource,
So I don't think it's a good turn to actually use the Courage Blade Hold
because you're still
since
down,
it
yeah.
would also add, yep, it will just negate the discount that it affords.
And especially the fact that it's on the second attack already. So
Yes.
it's like the negative,
Unless
yeah.
Uh, no, he has only two cards. So there are no shenanigans such as glint, glint twinning for a third attack. So
Yeah.
I don't think this is the best turn to pop off.
Yeah. It's like that. It's
So the
like that.
players are just yeah.
It's like when you have an energy potion up, but then the channel Lake Frigid comes out, and you
Yep.
you have to time whether you crack the potion because later allowing the channel Lake to resolve makes your energy potion cost a resource, so you're not really gaining that much, and uh trying to struggle through that without mathing it out properly means you're just playing into the Icelanders game.
Yeah, this is exactly the Icelanders game.
And holy
Again with the
cow.
wounded ball pitching, retaining the channel Lake Frigid for the next turn, and having an arsenal. This just showing us the power of Bollander.
And showing us the power of basically just pushing value every exchange.
Yeah, the that's the main problem with Dorinthia recently because of all the things that Bollander can do. It's hard to go over the hill that is Icelander.
And so we have
And you can see that the Dorinthia is only down to two cards in hand. One is a resource card, and another is a buff, either an attack reaction or a normal action. And this is, I think, only presenting a maximum damage of six.
unless he has something better in the arsenal, but I'm not really sure at this point what you could
Yeah.
have to pick you out of this situation. So
Oh
Icelander
crap!
passes.
Maybe no. The Dorinthia passed.
Oh, sorry, the Dorinthia
I
passes.
think they made a mistake. Yeah. So I think they made a mistake with their blocking, or they had an all red hand, so they couldn't actually do anything on their turn. And now
And that was wow,
this
that was
just
that's a,
adding salt to the wound.
yeah, and that, may I add, is a very very well placed ether ice vein coming from the arsenal, which almost means that it was probably a
Yeah.
read that the Dorinthea wouldn't do anything that would be worth disrupting at that time.
So pitching a blue and a red to block two arcane and discard effect. Oh crap! You can see here the Icelander was able to pitch two ice cards, again retaining the Channel Lake Frigid.
Okay, that is a very very brutal exchange right there. So again he's in a similar
Three.
situation as he was in last turn, where you have two cards, you're facing down a channel Lake Frigid, which is still alive by the way, and I'm not really sure what you do at this point. It's oh,
Yes, the Dorinthia player. If you can see here, this is a very smart play from Earl. He actually pitched the red star for a star, even though he didn't need to, because I think he wouldn't be able to trigger it, so there was no reason to actually keep it in his hand. It would just block. It would interfere with the other non-attack action cards that he could play.
yeah, I think he just wanted to get that out of his hand. And here we have
Yeah.
uh, a brain freeze. Oh, it's a brain freeze into the empty hand, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So for a zero, so just so he can use the waning moon on the opponent's turn, and it's back. It's back to his turn,
Mm-hmm.
and at this point, he's probably just looking to seal the game. So here we have
Yes.
an Ether Hail for 2. So this is a blue, which is most likely going to be followed up with
And
the,
this will be followed up by a
yep, the Waning Moon.
waning moon.
Yep. And at this point,
So
we see the Dory player just trying to keep their life above water, I guess.
yeah, looks to be going to be submerged very soon. The
Yep,
thing
but
with the Dorinthea, it's still very hand heavy, very hand hungry. So in order to actually threaten damage, he needs to keep certain cards in his hand. But if he doesn't block this, he'll just be dead the next turn.
and the fact that you have a singing steel blade, the fact that you have a singing steel blade just being used to pitch for arcane barrier kind of says a lot because that's a really powerful
Yes.
card in the lineup of Dorinthea, especially when they think they can make something that's threatening enough for you to force you to block it. Uh, so now that, but at
So you
this
can
point, the
see Earl
channel,
being a little bit excited.
and at least the channel Lake Frigid is gone now. But we will see if Enric can still do anything about that. Especially that I think it's more than paid for itself in the value it gained over those past 2 turns.
Okay, so now this is not looking very good for Dorinthea. Dorinthea is at 6 life, if I'm not mistaken.
It's a
And with the Striders still active and three more cards in hand, it's not looking good for Dorinthea.
and the fact that he's playing that into a naked Dawnblade swing kind of says a lot
Yes.
actually.
And there's still a Frostbite.
And there's still a frostbite, and he has no more floating resources, which means if he wants to follow up with something, he has to pay at least another resource. So,
So we can see that Dorinthea is actually playing scared because he did not use the glint because I think he wanted to have cards to pitch for Arcane Barrier.
oh, and that's one of the better blues you can have later in the game. So it's a blue ice bolt. So coming in for
Yep.
uh, this one comes in for 3, and we have a follow up
Yes.
waning moon. So he's taking, ooh, and he pitched a route for arcane barrier. So that's still leaking 1
Yeah. So
damage.
this feels like uh, yes, this feels like the Icelander version of the Kodachi lock, where the opponent is just forced to pitch for AB every turn. Oh, so this looks like it's going to be
Okay.
lethal.
Yeah, that's the favorite one of the favorite finishers of Icelander players, the Blue Emeritus Scolding,
Yes.
because it's basically a break point even past AB3, and the fact that he still has Striders up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so
So,
pitching two, preventing two,
yep,
so down to two, and
pitch.
with the waning moon, that is waning moon plus another arcane spell. I think that's going to be lethal.
And he still has Striders up. Okay, so he's using the. Okay.
Yep, yep.
So he.
Okay. So that's so he had the glistening steel blade in his arsenal for the longest time.
But couldn't play it.
So I think
Yeah.
that's Yeah, this is the showcase of um how lopsided the Icelander Dorinthia match could sometimes be.
especially if Icelander knows what she's doing early on. So now we have
Oh,
round two. This is the start of round two. We have Jonathan Visconde on Uzuri Switchblade versus Carlo Ople on Briar Warden of Thorns. And this
Carlo
looks
Ople.
like a very, very big turn zero. This is a cash in into a Force of Nature fused into a channel mount for the embodiment of lightning, and that's a snatch for 8. Go again. If it hits, it draws 2 cards because
So I
it's
think
greater
this is
than
what.
base.
Yep.
Oh my god.
I think this is the Carlo Ople special. Turn one, go first, and
Do big shit.
deal a crap load of damage, forcing equipment at the start of the game.
Holy cow. And that's very, very early.
Oh crap! So
Holy
that's hitting
cow.
for 11. With
So that
Lord,
was holy cow. That was a hand. That was an opening. And so he still
that
has
was
the
a
go again.
hand.
He still has to go again. He still has, holy cow, he has the entwine lightning and he has it fused, which means it has go again, and which means he can
For 7.
toss the. Okay, that's blocking 6. He's taking 1. He draws a card of the Force of Nature, and it's up to him at this point what he wants to do. He can probably. Okay, so he tosses the Lightning Surge, which most likely gets him a card as well, and he snaps it. So that's 7 more.
An opponent is down to 29 on the turn 0.
Holy cow. Well, that's what you get with Briar decks. Blink and you miss. So
25.
that's 25 from
So,
turn 0. He still has the Channel Mount Heroic up. And he has an Arsenal. So I guess that's a good turn. Yeah,
and
I was
if
be
I'm not mistaken, that is a 29 damage threatened turn. At
so
turn
past
0, the
past the
force of
blocks.
nature, yes, including the crown of providence that was used as a generic 2 block.
It's a generic 2 block. Also, I think that was a Bramble Spark that hit the Arsenal. So he most likely has a follow-up to that.
I think this is also an interesting loadout for the Zuri. They only have they're playing Flick Knives, Black Tech Whispers, Crown of Providence, Fiendas, and an Arcane Lantern with the Spider's Bite.
I think that's not
So we
so
can see,
unusual. Oh,
yeah.
it's that sequence where you play Shred before you switch in. So he switches it in
Mm.
and he does have the CNC. So it pushes through because the shred resolves before the switch in happens.
Mhm.
So you're already down resources, and if you don't have a defense react to interact with that, oh wait, you can't anyway. Uh, if you don't have a defense react from Arsenal, you won't be able to interact with the isolate anyway. So I guess this is the clarification on the sequencing. Uh,
Yeah, I think the shred targeted
the
the
channel
Diadic
mount.
Carapace,
Oh,
which
uh,
has enter.
so
So I
targeting the
think that
dyadic.
that is the issue.
Oh, so
Yes.
targeting the dyadic carapace so that when the temper resolves, it's got 0 defense at that point.
Mhm. However, I'm not really sure if that was the most optimal play, but
Well,
I think it's fine.
yeah, I think hitting. getting the CNC through and hitting an armor piece as well is, I think, enough value for that sort of exchange, considering that that was two cards of value, meaning one card
Mm-hmm.
and the two cards and an equipment worth of value. So that's still not an insignificant amount. And here we have, in retaliation, only a lightning surge for 7. It doesn't have go again since it was played from hand. Uh, I think I think Jonathan's just going to let this through.
Ah, he doesn't.
Oh, okay. So we check to see what he sinks. It looks like he's not sinking.
Hmm. Very interesting play from the side of the Briar. Retaining two cards, not pitching for grasp. So I think these are cards that he wants for the next turn.
Either that or they're both reds, since you don't have enough to
Yeah,
pitch.
that.
I think what was left over from the previous turn was a scar for a scar.
Hmm. That would make sense. Is this an isolate or a?
It's an
I'm not very familiar with the
it
assassin cards.
I think it's an isolate. It looks like an isolate red. So the thing with isolate is that it's probably the best
Hmm.
card you can use to switch out for command and conquer since it's got dominate, and the dominate means that if you can't def react from hand when the switch out doesn't happen yet, and if you switch in a command and conquer, it's too late.
So, if I'm not mistaken, a pretty clunky hand from the side of the Briar as well. The CNC, Nimblism, Scar for a Scar, and the Channel Mount Heroic. So I think you just want to play out his Arsenal and the other three cards, and maybe Arsenal the Channel Mount Heroic for a bigger turn.
But again, but again you're
They
going
are.
against you're going against an Uzuri,
Mm,
which is one of the probably one of the most disruptive characters around these days. Uh, Uzuri and Bravo, I guess. So
oh,
it's going to be tricky. And there we have Death Touch being swapped in. So he
so
takes
that's going to deal 6 damage.
and what token is he getting? Uh,
It would be greedy to get a Blood Rot, but that's fine. A Frailty would also be okay, since it would prevent 1 damage from the Rosetta and maybe one from the
from the
Arsenal. But you
arsenal.
don't really know what card is in the Arsenal. So
Hmm.
this is what I've been saying with just playing out the three cards and leaving the Channel Mount Heroic for the next turn.
But the problem here is that the Channel Mount Heroic still stuck in hand.
Yes.
So
I I'm not sure what card is this in Arsenal. We'll see.
so he has defense reactions as well. I think I see a Sigil of
Yeah,
Suffering,
Vigil of Suffering.
and we have Uzuri going in with a Spider's Bite, uh, which would not really, well, depending on what his hand is, especially considering that
No,
we don't have the
that was her
embodiment.
hand.
Wait, what was the hand? Oh, okay, that is that a
Sensor.
sensor? Yeah, okay, that's a sensor for 5, and
Yes, it's a sensor.
letting that
Um,
hit allow him to allow him to name something that uh, might allow him to at least delay a channel mount turn, I guess. Especially considering that that
yeah, I
Arsenal
agree.
card's been there. So depending on whether Jonathan makes the read,
Mm-hmm.
oh, and that's the Sigil of Suffering. But he still has one floating resource,
I wish he
so
was able to pay for the one arcane.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that means that's just blocking for three, but that's still good enough. That's
The
still blocking
sensor
for
doesn't.
five total.
Yeah, I think that was the call from Jonathan in the previous turn. Since he knew that Carlo kept a card in hand, it was most likely a channel mount heroic.
And I think
Seek Horizon. Did he put any cards from hand? Or he
uh
didn't?
no, because he blocked with
I don't think so.
he blocked with a sigil, so that's still that's that's just played as is,
Mm.
so that shouldn't have go again.
So what is in the arsenal? Is it another lightning threat? Oh, so he blocked with a.
Frailty trap.
Oh, okay.
I think he's just trying to get that out of his hand for the time being.
Yep.
So that is
Yeah, Frailty Trap is a very good card against Lexi or even the ninjas, but for Briar, it's just okay. Oops, a surgical extraction. Going for four, and if Carlo doesn't have a def react, this will take cards.
mm, one card from hand and one card from the top.
The So a beautiful rainbow foil enlightened strike.
And we see Jonathan trying to, I guess, evaluate if it's worth banishing the blue card for the extra silver. Because the hand is still one that that functions really well without the blue anyway.
Mm-hmm. I think the best card to get would be the enlightened strike actually. But can you get it from surgical extraction?
Yeah. It's banish a card from hand, and it only that it doesn't fulfill the contract.
Yeah, which I think is fine.
Yeah, at this point, I don't think you're looking to stock up on silver anyway. But anyway, he takes the so tomorrow, so the blue, in order to get the silver. And I think you still need to look at the top card of the deck. Uh, that's
Was that
Marvel
a
Command and
Marvel
Conquer.
CNC?
Yep. So that's only net one silver. But the problem here is Jonathan doesn't have an arsenal, so uh, Carlos still has a channel mount heroic up, and that's an E strike going for a lot of damage. So that's oh, I think he's giving that go again
Go again.
because that's five and three from the channel mount. So there's
Marvel is only blocking four.
no blocks in a sink below, so blocking only four. There's the embodiment, and you have a scar for seven. Holy cow, that's still a big turn. And you see Jonathan thinking of blocking with two cards, which is kind of a bad exchange on his part. But at least now
Mm-hmm.
the channel mount is not there anymore, and I guess his best option is to Arsenal and just look for a better hand since he still has Def Reacts and his equipment is still intact. The fact that the black deck is
Yeah,
still
but the
there is
problem is,
oh
Carlo and Briar now has the tempo advantage now with the full hand.
and it's a
Since he's playing out an entwine like
very big
yes,
tempo advantage considering that he's playing off the life lead which he had from
yes,
turn zero.
yeah, where he dealt 15 damage or 11 if not I'm not mistaken.
And here we have a second rainbow foil enlightened strike coming in for 5. Go
We go
again.
again. So I'm wondering what is the Arsenal card on Carla's side, since this has been in Arsenal for several turns now.
Mm. I just hope to God it's not a third channel mount or something. Oh, and there's a snatch coming in for 4. It doesn't have to go again, but at least he still has a card for whatever that's worth.
Mm-hmm.
And you have Jonathan trying to block it out for to deny value. But at this point, that wasn't so much value denied in the block.
Yeah,
And let's see what Jonathan has on the swing back.
yeah. More often than not, the thing the Uzuris want to do would be to block two cards, play two cards, and try to get more value from the ability of Uzuri. However, this hasn't been working at all, since Carlos has been able to present above rate attacks since the start of the game, using the because of the channel mount heroics that he was able to drop, as well as multiple 0 for 4s.
And this is a looking for a scrap. I think at this point he's just trying to uh,
Mm.
squeeze out some
To get
value
some
and
sort.
to have some parity in their life totals. Because
Yeah,
aside from being an efficient more or less attack, looking for a scrap doesn't really do anything here. Doesn't really contribute much to the board state. And at this point, the sacrifice there or the trade-off there was getting rid of your arsenal. So now you basically give your opponent the read that you have uh, not much in terms of value that you can squeeze out in response to whatever they're trying to pull off. So we'll see how Carlo, we'll see how Briar blocks this out if ever he chooses to block this out.
yeah. He's pretty much not very incentivized to block out this turn, since this is just damage. And if he has a hand that he's able to play out all of the cards, um, he'd rather race since all the tempo is with him anyway.
And the thing with Briar decks is that the cards really play off one another. So you have two cards, three cards that need to be played one after the other. So you have your Nimblisms and you have your 0 for 4s and you have your 0 cost none attacks to give them go again with the
Yeah, more or
embodiment of
less
lightning,
the Rune Blade thing,
the Rune Blade
the Rune
things.
Blade curse of both a curse and a blessing.
Hmm.
So he has, I think, a Earthlore Surge.
Yeah, that's an
I
Earthlore Surge, and
wasn't
I
able to
think
see the
that's
other cards, but
I don't know if that's a Command and Conquer at the back. I'm not really sure, but I haven't been counting how many Command and Conquers have been played already as well. So that's a Force of Nature
okay.
and an Earthlore
So
Surge. So that's a Force of Nature fused. That's not a Command and Conquer. That's a Gloom Veil.
so this is creating a an embodiment of lightning,
Yep, this is
as
an
well
embodiment of
as
lightning.
with oh, so that was in what was in the arsenal,
The
another
Marvel
CNC. So
CNC.
it doesn't have much value. Yeah, but there isn't much value because the opponent has an arsenal, but it's fine. It's still 10 damage and
And
also
it's
threatening
and
uh
isn't that
draw
supposed
card.
to isn't that supposed to have go again?
I think he should have had
Eh,
created the embodiment of lightning first. So let's see how they resolve it. It
because that's two non-attack
It
actions.
should have had go again. Yep. So I think it was a mistrigger on Carlos' part.
Which is unfortunate since you can still follow that up with a Rosetta.
Hmm. Did he take any damage from the attack? He wasn't supposed to. If
Uh
it
yeah, he
he was
didn't.
able to block 10 damage.
Yeah, he was able to block 10. Because that was two three blocks and two three blocks in an Oasis.
Ah, yeah, yeah. He adjusted the counter because he gained the life. Loser gained the life.
Yeah. And
Ooh.
Briar would have drawn a card with that. So we see here he's pitching for
Yeah.
a rune chant, and that's a blessing of spring, one of the cards that came out as Briar support from Dusk Till Dawn, one of the last few
And actually,
pieces
for
of
Blessing of
support.
Spring, very good piece of support. The thing is with Blessing of Spring, I keep forgetting um what use it has if you play it out, since it has so much value when you use it for blocking, especially
Uh,
with the non-attack 3 block.
Basically, the value is
It just
plus
gives plus
one.
one life.
Yep, but it's a zero for plus one for the next attack. And the thing is, it's any attack. Because the thing with some of the
Mm,
Briar cards, and some of the more
they're
traditional
conditional.
buffs is that they have limitations on what cards can be buffed. So you have Nimblism, which checks for zeros and ones. You have some of the buffs which affect only elemental cards, like what Weave Earth used to do before it was so quickly replaced by Blessing when it came out.
So Rosetta for 2 and 2.
Yes, the very, very evil Rosetta 2 for 2. 2 and 2. So we have
So
Jonathan
taking the
going
one arcane
AP1
damage,
and
blocking with
blocking the
looking for a
2.
scrap.
Yep.
So all the tempo is with Carlo this time around. Um, Jonathan has had difficulty getting back the tempo because of the amount of damage that Carl has been able to present every turn since
A-
that turn zero.
And here we see one of the criticisms of Uzuri. I mean, not necessarily criticism, but one of the things that people noticed early on when Uzuri was being play tested, that she can be very card hungry as well. So pitching into a follow up at pitching for the Spider's Bite for a follow up attack, with a card to switch in, and considering that the card that has to be switched in has to come from hand, it kind of builds up, or it kind of adds up, in the sense that even if you're when you're playing defensive, it's kind of obvious. So we have here so tomorrow into Ravenous Rabble. So the
Only for
Ravenous
two.
Rabble revealing a blue. So unfortunately, that's just for two. A very easy block.
Also interesting to note that, yeah,
But then again, the thing you have with Ravenous Rabble is usually the four is a nice thing, but the two is mostly because it's a zero for go again, which means that you're still good for Rosetta. And we see Carlo playing around with the Rosetta, almost as if to say that this is my
this
follow up. And there we
again,
go.
oh, so effective use of the Oasis Respite, preventing the 4 damage from the Rosetta, the 2 arcane, and the 2 physical damage.
And gaining one life, which is
So
getting more and more relevant at this point of the game.
Yeah, and for Uzuri, I'm not really sure the game plan for the Uzuri when it comes to matches like this. Since I don't, is it possible for Uzuri to actually go to fatigue against a Briar with the Channel Mount heroics?
I guess it depends on how the Uzuri disrupts along with the fatigue plan, because the disruption is probably the best weapon Uzuri has to be able to force out key cards to make sure that the combos don't string together as they should. But at this point, trading damage, I'm not sure if this is the best option that Uzuri has. Uh, I think this looks like a more aggro build, seeing that it has looking for a scrap and give and take. So those are cards that you don't see too often in Uzuri. So which makes me think that this is a more aggressive deck that probably likes to trade damage a little more than the decks which have three Oasis, three Fate Foreseen, three Sink Below.
Did your video stop?
No. So this is an Exude Confidence from Briar.
So I think Carlo has been playing this very well. If not presenting damage with Channel Mount Heroic and Force of Nature, just providing good value in the card combinations that he had
And
with Entwine
oh,
followed by Lightning.
so he's still pushing damage through. That's now coming in for 8, if I'm not mistaken, since that's two blues most likely. So that's still a leak of 2 damage past the 2 card block of Uzuri. And we see the Tunic resource
Mm-hmm.
being used for, oh, that's another sensor. Another disruptive piece that I'm not sure as the Briar player you want to let through.
It would heavily depend on what you think your opponent would name on using the sensor. At this point, he was already able to use two channel mount heroics, if I'm not mistaken, and he got one from the graveyard using So Tomorrow.
Yeah, but that's still, but the fact that it's from So Tomorrow means that it'll be a while before it comes back up. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
sure what was named here since it looks obvious that Carlo took that. So he's down. I think that's 15 against 13 or 12. So that means the Scar for a Scar has go again.
Yes, I think Carlo is now thinking that he can now raise to Uzuri, given the amount of damage that he can present every turn, and giving more value from the Scar of a Scar, since he has less life.
Oh wow, so you have a block for 3 and a frailty trap for 3 more, which means that Scar for a Scar's only hitting for 1. And I guess that's a gamble that whatever's in Arsenal is also an attack. Or maybe he's just trying to get some value out of having a defense reaction in Arsenal. So this is being followed up with Seek Horizon for 4. It has go again since he placed a card from his hand on top of his deck. Being blocked for 3. So 1 pushes through. And he still has go again, so I guess he has a follow up. And that's an Entwine Lightning being blocked fully because it's affected by the Frailty token from the Frailty Trap.
Yeah, the Seek Horizon is, I think, a very interesting addition to the Briar, to the aggressive Briar lists. since it is a conditional go again if you put a card from your hand on top of the deck. And if you have ways to draw cards, it just ensures that you know what you're going to draw for your next turn, or if you draw from top.
And this is a very, very good follow-up from the Uzuri player. It's Codex of Frailty against a Briar with no arsenal. So we have to wait for the Briar player to place a card in his arsenal and discard a card.
Yeah, Codex of Frailty has been seeing much use in the Ranger lists and the Assassin lists. It had actually more use in it has been used efficiently in Lexi decks. In order to push more damage and basically remove a card from your opponent's hand, while also getting recursion for one of your arrows to put into arsenal. For Uzuri, on the other hand, I think it's just for the value effect of trading cards for cards while also pushing damage.
And I think this is this particular play, the Codex of Frailty into Leave No Witnesses. This is probably one of the best value plays that Uzuri gets with the Codex. So we're still waiting for Carlo to put a card in Arsenal, and he puts a Lightning Surge in. And because Leave No Witnesses is a 0 for 4, meaning it's a break point, it has to, given that Carlo has no more blocking equipment left, it means he has to block with 2 cards or else risk having that Lightning Surge get destroyed as well. Oh, and there's a Sigil of Suffering, which blocks into that perfectly.
Yeah, so Sigil of Suffering is also a very good card, especially when your opponent can't pay for the arcane damage. It's actually either 5 value or just 3 value. Depends on what your opponent has.
And this is a
And
surprising
especially for
move.
decks against Aturi.
This is a surprising move that
Huh.
Jonathan drew a card off Ponder but didn't didn't arsenal the card.
So it signifies to me that this is a card that he might want to banish using Uzuri, or it might be a resource card that would just be stuck in Arsenal if he put it there.
Mm. So he's so he blocked that out. We have a little damage leaking through, and now we're back to his turn, and that's another Leave No Witnesses, another 0 for 4, and that goes into, oh my god, that's another Sigil of Suffering.
Gaining the maximum amount of value from the Sigil of Suffering.
And the fact that he's
It came in
still
at the
leaking
perfect
the
time.
and the fact that he's still leaking damage through that. And I guess that's the last Sigil of Suffering he has. So
Yes,
so
this is
that's an
third one.
unfused Bramble Spark into a Ravenous Rabble for 4.
So it's basically a double break point with one arcane, and then 4 damage from the Ravenous Ravel, also activating the Rosetta Thorn. So they're now at 12 and how many life? 10 life.
It looks like it's 10. So I guess at this point he's just trying to push, and
Mm-hmm.
he's just trying to make sure that he's leaking damage every time he has the opportunity to do so, especially like in situations like this one where he just pitches a second Ravenous Rabble to play the Rosetta, which is probably the best value weapon in the game at this point.
Yes, it is because of the 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 living legend status of Oldhim and Winter's Way. Oh, it was banned first. So that turn actually presented 9 damage using 3 cards, and he only pitched a red card. So, so again, this is another tricky play from the Uzuri, threatening to use the ability from the attack reaction from Uzuri. So Carlo is playing this very patiently. I don't think he had a very good hand for if he kept all of it.
Yeah,
So
it
just
looks like a
using
yeah, it looks like a hand that he didn't really need. So we have an E strike coming in for 7, and I think that's lethal for Jonathan if he doesn't block this out. So he blocks 3, takes 4. Oh, and he
yes.
has a Fate Foreseen. So it's his turn to do the perfect blocking. So he has 2 cards left. That's an Isolate. And again, we have the Uzuri mind game with us.
It's not very there are no good Uzuri targets at this point because Carlo does not have an arsenal. Unless he has a perfect card, his Death Touch,
Or
which would
un-
threaten 6 damage as well as
unless it's
ah
or unless it's a
give it go
shakedown.
again.
Okay. So that's a death touch which goes through and he gives it and he cracks black deck to give it go again. So he has the blood
Oh,
rot
this
with
is a
him.
very good turn.
Oh, and that's a second death
This is a
touch
very good move. So this is also presenting lethal.
because Carlo is at
Wow.
6. Am I correct?
Yes, he is at 6. Yes, he is at 6. Still with the threat of the blood rot token.
So that's a
Was he able
block
to
for
block 6? Did
4.
he have
He
a
doesn't have an embodiment. So that's
yeah?
oh wait.
I'm
So
not sure what's going on. Did he have an embodiment?
I think Jonathan blocked out the E strike from the previous turn.
Yeah,
So
so Carla should have taken 2 more damage. So a clean block with the sink, and he paid for the blood rot. So let's see if it matters.
the problem is he doesn't have an arsenal now.
So he takes it, goes down to 5. So at this point, Spider's Bite becomes more threatening actually
Oh,
because although it deals just 1 damage, the
did he
the hit effect
did he
will
close the
matter.
combat chain?
I'm not sure. The Spider Bite indicate it should be in the same combat chain.
Not necessarily, but it's just weird that you close the combat chain for this. Anyway, its effect is still on. So he's blocking the isolate with 1 card without an embodiment, which means that the Nimblism is only blocking for 2.
So this is actually very threatening. Oh, for a CNC for 6. He's going down to 1.
He's going down to 1, but you have a flick knives.
No, no, no. Yeah, I agree.
I guess that's why
Oh, okay, okay, okay.